Before we begin today, first of all, thank you again for being here so much on time, and we're able to start a little bit earlier. The other thing is Dr. Christensen is going to be testifying this morning. The reason is there's a bit of a scheduling issue, so we'll be taking a break from Ms. Dikeman's examination and going into Dr. Christensen. The intention is we'll go back to Ms. Dikeman as soon as we're done with the doctor this morning. All right, with that, let's begin.
Your Honor, the defense calls Dr. Erik Christensen.
Yeah. It's right here.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony given in this manner shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Go ahead. You might want to settle.
Thank you. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Would you please state and spell your name for the jury in court order?
My name is Erik Christensen. It's E-R-I-K. Last name C-H-R-I-S-T-E-N-S-E-N.
Doctor, what is your occupation?
I am a forensic pathologist.
And are you board certified in forensic pathology?
I am, yes.
What is your current position?
I am currently a full-time, well, actually part-time consultant in forensic pathology, where I am involved in the review of both criminal and civil cases involving deaths to assist the attorneys that hire me. Sometimes there are other people that hire me as well. I've been doing this as my only occupation for the last couple of years since retiring as the chief medical examiner for the state of Utah.
And Doctor, I'm approaching you with a document labeled Exhibit 311. Hand it to you?
Yes.
What is that document? Is that a fairly current copy of your curriculum vitae?
It's a couple years old, and it's missing the first 2 pages. But other than that, it's yes.
Thank you. Could you briefly describe your duties in your former role as chief medical examiner?
I was responsible for the administration of a statewide medical examiner system. Our office was responsible for the investigation of all sudden, unexpected, or non-natural deaths within the state of Utah. That annually was somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,500 deaths a year. I supervised the work of 10 other forensic pathologists, as well as full-time investigative staff and autopsy assistant staff, and then various other people, clerical staff and epidemiologists and others.
And I know you don't have an exact number, but could you describe how many autopsies you've performed during your career?
Somewhere over 7,000.
And have you previously testified in court as an expert witness?
I have, yes.
And does your work include investigating deaths involving children?
It does.
And does your work also include reviewing toxicology results?
Yes, that's a routine part of forensic pathology work.
In preparing for your opinions on this case, Doctor, what materials did you review?
I reviewed medical records for Alexavier, both his birth records, outpatient pediatric records, hospitalization records related to his broken leg, and then events surrounding his death. I reviewed the information from the La Crosse County Sheriff's Office, a number of reports, and then the autopsy findings from Mayo Clinic and their associated documents.
And that would include toxicology findings?
Yes.
And are these the types of materials that forensic pathologists normally rely on in forming opinions?
Yes.
Now, doctor, it is sometimes the case that a second autopsy may be conducted. Was that a realistic possibility in this case?
Not to my experience. Certainly by the time I was involved in the case, it was not an option.
And can you explain to the jury, you got into this a little bit, but what a forensic pathologist does?
Sure. So forensic pathology is a specialty of medicine, a subspecialty of pathology itself. Pathology is a specialty like surgery or internal medicine or pediatrics. And pathology is involved specifically with the understanding and elucidation of causes of disease, and forensic pathology is the application of general pathology skills to the investigation of sudden, unexpected, or violent deaths to evaluate them for trauma, with the ultimate aim of determining the cause of death for that individual, as well as what we call the manner of death, which is a description of the circumstances in which the death occurred. And that manner of death is a vital record function. It's something that we record on the death certificate by checking a box. It was either a natural death, it was an accident, it was a suicide, whatever it might have been.
And is your role to decide who is legally responsible for a death?
No.
And what does it mean when a death is classified as undetermined?
So undetermined is one of 5 choices for manner of death that we as pathologists have when we complete a death certificate. As I said, death can be determined to be natural, accident, suicide, homicide, and then the 5th option is undetermined. And undetermined is a manner that we use in cases where there is insufficient evidence to make a determination between 2 other manners. Most common example we see is probably an individual who has a history of substance use disorder, who is known to abuse, say, for example, opiates. But that person also has a history of depression and maybe even prior suicide attempts, and then that person is found dead of an overdose of opiates. In the absence of something like a note or something else to definitively help us know, was this just part of their usual drug use, or was this something they did on purpose at this time, we will certify many of those types of deaths as undetermined.
And the undetermined classification, that's used when medical evidence does not allow doctors to rule out multiple causes. Is that a fair
Yes.
statement, as you've indicated? Were you able to determine one definite cause of death in this case?
No.
What is your opinion regarding the cause of death?
I think this death is most appropriately certified as undetermined cause. That doesn't mean there's no idea what it is. Certainly there are many things that it is not. But ultimately, I think this comes down to a question of, the impact of trauma and the impact of drugs. And there's not sufficient information to sort those 2 out.
And were you able to rule out drug intoxication as a cause of death?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Were you able to rule out drug intoxication as a cause of death?
No.
And what do you believe was the most likely medical mechanism of death?
But mechanistically, the findings are most consistent with this child having died of respiratory failure. There are findings of pulmonary edema, which does take some time to develop. There are also some changes of cerebral edema and other indicators that the death occurred over a period of time, was not an instantaneous event, and that's most consistent with a death from respiratory failure.
And so you would agree with Dr. Quinton that his autopsy findings demonstrate a gradual dying process?
Yes.
And were the findings in this case consistent with injury caused by lack of oxygen to the brain?
That was the ultimate cause of the brain injury, yes.
And would you agree with Dr. Quinton that there is no evidence of lethal traumatic head injury?
I would agree with that, yes.
And did the autopsy show any evidence that Alexavier had been strangled?
No.
Did the autopsy demonstrate evidence that shows Alexavier had been asphyxiated or smothered?
No.
And let's talk about blood loss. Can severe blood loss deprive the brain of oxygen?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And approximately how much blood loss is typically required to cause death?
That really varies depending on which source you read. The trauma literature provides some guidance, the pathology literature also some, but generally speaking, the number that's discussed is somewhere between a third and a half of all of your blood volume, which that varies by age. Children obviously have much less total blood than adults do. Obese people have more blood than skinny people. All of those, there are a number of factors that go into how much blood you have, but if you lose between a third and a half of your blood volume, that certainly can lead to your death.
And approximately how much internal bleeding was found in this case?
The measured amount of blood was about 100 milliliters. And in a child of this size, his total blood volume would be expected to be somewhere around, somewhere over 1.5 liters, so 1,500 milliliters or more.
And was the measured amount significantly less than would normally be associated with death from blood loss?
Yes.
And now, is it possible that some internal bleeding may not always be fully measurable?
That's absolutely the case. So when someone is injured, for example, I mean, we're all familiar with bruises. If you have a bruise, there is bleeding into that tissue that makes that bruise visible. But there's not any way to measure how much blood that is. And the same thing happens internally. In addition to blood that may fill up in cavities that we can actually collect and measure, you can also have blood within the soft tissues. In this case, Dr. Quint described hemorrhage within what's called the mesentery, which is the supportive structures for the intestines and around the head of the pancreas and a few other places within the back of the abdomen. You can't also, just like you can't really quantitate how much blood is in a bruise, there's not a way to quantitate how much is in that space, but you know that it's no more than what the volume of that tissue itself would be.
And so even considering the possibility that there was, in fact, some unmeasurable blood loss, was there evidence suggesting that blood loss was severe enough to cause death in this case?
I don't believe so, no.
Now, can a drug overdose cause death by reducing oxygen to the brain?
Yes, that's probably the most common mechanism.
And can you explain to the jury how that happens?
Sure. Any number of drugs can do this, but alprazolam, which is a question in this case, also is certainly known to do it. Anything that causes your breathing to slow or stop can lead to respiratory failure. So opiates particularly are known to do that, to even stop your breathing, but alprazolam and the other medications in its class are also known to slow your respirations. And if you normally breathe 12 to 15 times a minute, but the drug has slowed your breathing to 3 to 4 times a minute, that's just not going to be enough to get you all the oxygen you need. It's enough to keep you alive for even an extended period of time before you would actually die from that, but it's not going to be ultimately enough to keep your brain alive or to keep your heart happy. Those are both probably the two organs in your body that require the most oxygen.
And can overdose on alprazolam, also known as Xanax, can that slow or suppress breathing?
Yes.
Okay. And this would all be consistent with Dr. Quinton's description of this as a gradual process. Is that fair?
It would, yes.
And can alprazolam lead to hypoxic or anoxic brain injury?
Yes.
Can it also dull the senses?
Yes, it can make you, typical symptoms, especially an overdose, would be, drowsiness, lethargy, confusion, slurred speech, all the way up to coma and death.
And how about with regard to pain?
It's not a pain medication per se. It's not like an opiate. It's blocking pain receptors in your body, but because it alters your thinking, it can dull your response to pain, yes.
Okay. So let's move on to the injury findings. Alexavier had significant injuries, is that fair?
He had a number of significant injuries, yes.
And were those injuries consistent with blunt force trauma?
They are. Mm-hmm.
And does inflicted trauma necessarily mean the injuries were intentionally inflicted?
Can you ask that again?
Well, let me ask it a different way. But are you familiar with the ways that blunt liver injuries can occur?
Yes.
And can those types of injuries occur without somebody intentionally trying to kill a child?
Yes. So blunt injuries by their nature are nonspecific, with, a few exceptions. I mean, if, someone is stomped on with a boot with a particular pattern, that may leave a pattern that tells me it was that kind of boot. Or if someone is hit with an implement that leaves a specific type of pattern, then I might be able to say it's consistent with some rod-like implement or something sort of generally in that class of things. But for the most part, blunt injuries simply signify the interaction of a body with a blunt object. That can either be because the object is being moved against the person, or it can be because the person fell into whatever object it was. But the injury itself doesn't really tell you much about what caused it, short of a pattern that would reflect an implement, a specific implement.
And the injury patterns that you observed, would those be specific to one single cause?
No.
And would they be specific, strike that, can forensic pathology determine the exact time an injury occurred?
No. Really, the best we can do is broad swaths of time. So an injury can have characteristics of being an acute injury, meaning it happened, anywhere from minutes ago or seconds ago, all the way up to, even a day, would be, the sort of earliest, broadest category of what we can see based on those types of findings. As we start to see the body responding to that injury, meaning inflammatory cells come in and other things where the body's trying to clean up what has happened, that tells you that it didn't just happen, that it's been some number of hours or days since that happened. And then as the injuries then further heal, you start to see scar tissue and other things, and you know that those have been going on for days. But there's nothing you can look at pathologically that allows you to determine it was 3 hours ago or 5 hours ago or 12 hours ago. The best you can say with findings that suggest it just happened, that it's probably somewhere in the last 24 hours.
And so you indicated the time frame for the possibility of injuries that were seen in the autopsy would be 24 hours?
More or less. And all of the timing related to those things is subject to, the addition of other information. So, for example, it doesn't necessarily apply in this case, but if there was video evidence that showed an injury occurred 26 hours before this, it could still be consistent with that.
Now, could any of these injuries be consistent with rough play between children?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And could you describe those injuries?
Sure. I mean, any injury, really could involve any of the injuries this child has. Bruises, injuries related to the liver. It would depend on the nature of the play, obviously. A routine kind of play is not going to do that, but if somebody gets shoved over, knocked over, stepped on, other things certainly could lead to really any of these injuries. It's unlikely that that type of play would account for all of the injuries.
And if there was testimony establishing that the child's father had access to the child the prior evening between approximately 5:30 and 7:30, would the autopsy findings be consistent with injuries occurring during that time period?
Yes.
And could those injuries be consistent with being struck with an open hand?
They could be. Some could be, not all of them.
And others would require a different mechanism?
Yes.
Okay. And is it likely that multiple events contributed to the injuries?
Yes, I mean, just the distribution of the injuries on this child, from head to extremities and torso, and all the different places are not consistent with all of this resulting from a single blow, if you will, or single impact. Just by their distribution, that it required multiple specific discrete impacts to cause those injuries.
And does that require a prolonged time period?
No. I mean, it could be. You can't say that it's not. I mean, within the time frame of 24 hours, they all would look more or less the same pathologically. You can't really distinguish them that way, but just from the physical act of causing the injuries, certainly it could be quick or it could be protracted. There's not a way to know from looking at them.
And do these injuries as a whole prove that homicidal violence occurred?
No. I mean, it's back to that whole question of specificity. You know, blunt injuries are blunt injuries. If they are accidental in nature, which you can't tell by looking, or inflicted trauma, you can't distinguish that just from looking at them.
And did you find injuries that would typically did you find injuries that would typically be associated with an intentional homicide?
Objection, that calls for a comment on the mental state of the person. That's a question for the jury.
Well, I think he has experience with determining the severity of injuries and whether they're consistent with an intent to actually cause death. That certainly is within his expertise.
Not his job, he just testified to that.
So this is, I believe the question's about, there's the different use of intentional act versus non-intentional act in medical. Is that correct? Is that what you're asking about? Not the element, but the medical?
I guess the point I'm getting at is did the injuries demonstrate that the person who caused them intended the child to die?
Yeah, I'll allow him to ask that question.
So blunt injuries, again, are nonspecific generally, and cases that I see where the cause of death is distinctly or definitely results from violent actions, violent blunt force applied by another individual. I would expect to see more trauma in the head, more trauma in other locations than what I see present in this case.
And doctor, do the autopsy findings instead suggest another possible cause of death that was more likely?
Yes.
Specifically, would that be consistent with anoxic brain injury caused by alprazolam intoxication?
Yes.
And doctor, you talked a little bit about this, but I don't know if we got into all of the details. What is alprazolam?
Alprazolam is a benzodiazepine medication. It's used to treat anxiety by itself, used to treat anxiety associated with depression, and it's part of a class of other similar medications. It's one of the more common ones that's prescribed for that indication, and it has sedating effects.
Okay. And can you elaborate on those effects that alprazolam can have in an overdose situation?
Sure. Like I mentioned before, lethargy, inability, incoordination, stumbling, slurred speech is described, and then, on that spectrum, as a person becomes more and more affected by it, can lead to coma and even death.
And you've indicated it can suppress breathing, and that would reduce oxygen flow to the brain?
It can, yes.
And can that lead to death?
Can that lead to anoxic brain injury?
Well, let me ask you, did the toxicology testing show alprazolam in Alexavier's system?
It showed, yes, alprazolam was present at a high level in his blood.
And what was the level of alprazolam in Alexavier's system?
The measured number was 250 nanograms per milliliter.
And you said the measured level, that was measured from a sample of blood taken during the autopsy?
It was a sample taken at autopsy of what was described as what's called cavity blood. So it was not blood that they were able to get from a vessel itself. And when you take blood from a cavity, it's obviously still blood, but you don't know necessarily what else it might be mixed with. Was there, fluid present in the pleural cavity before the blood leaked into there that you collected? And so it's not reliable as a means of determining specifically whether the level that you get. You just don't. There's not reference ranges for cavity blood. You don't really know what that number means in cavity blood, except that the substance is present in the system. But you don't know how that level would compare to a sample taken from a blood vessel.
And so, in other words, we can't take that result and conclude automatically that that was representative of the level that was found in Alexavier's circulating blood.
That's correct.
Okay. Is it possible, however, that the level that you found was the level that was in Alexavier's circulating blood?
That's certainly possible.
And you indicated 250 nanograms per milliliter. What is the number of, or what is the level that is considered potentially fatal in adults?
So in adults, the typical range for toxicity starts somewhere around 100. Deaths have been reported at levels as low as 140 in adults. In children, we don't really have good reference ranges because it's, one, not a drug that children take very frequently. I mean, certainly I'm sure there are children that are prescribed it, but it's not something that there's a lot of data about, and especially not in a postmortem setting. And so we don't know necessarily what it means in children, but it's the level that is measured in him would be certainly very high for an adult and would be sufficient to explain that adult's death.
And doctor, can children be even more vulnerable to those effects?
It depends on the medication, but yes, is the short answer.
And is alprazolam overdose a reasonable explanation for Alexavier's injuries?
For his anoxic brain injury, yes. It certainly could be caused by that.
And can an overdose be accidental?
Yes.
Now, we talked about some of the symptoms of alprazolam. And you indicated it can cause lethargy, is that fair?
Yes.
Could it cause a person to be unusually difficult to wake up?
Yes.
And can it reduce responsiveness to pain or stimulation?
Yes.
And if there was testimony that law enforcement officers were present in the home between 7 and 7:30 and observed Alexavier had very the difficult time arousing him, would that be consistent potentially with alprazolam intoxication?
It would, yes.
And in failing to wake in response to a flashlight, that would be consistent.
It certainly could be caused by alprazolam, yes.
And would slurred speech before falling into a deep sleep also be consistent?
Yes.
And did you find any evidence, well, let me ask, would a history of a child waking up at night and getting into things also be important contextual information?
Yes.
Okay. And did you find any evidence that alprazolam had been forcibly administered?
No.
And what might you expect to see if that were the case?
So, in a forced administration, the assumption is that the person doesn't want to take it and they're resisting. And if you've had a situation like that, you might expect to see injuries around the person's mouth and other things of that nature, but there's no indication of that.
And let's talk a little bit about something different, about CPR. You're familiar with CPR, is that
Yes.
right? And if there was testimony that Alexavier had either white foam or black liquid emitting from his mouth immediately after first responders began to move him to the floor and perform CPR, what would you make of that?
I mean, it would not really be unexpected. The most significant finding of those two that you mentioned is certainly the presence of a white foam is consistent with respiratory failure, but the presence of black fluid coming from the mouth doesn't really mean anything to me.
As an expert who looks at these things, would that prove that someone had not previously attempted CPR on Alexavier?
No, it would not.
And the black fluid, would that necessarily be blood?
No. I've had many cases over the years where a person had blackish material either on their face or coming from their mouth. The investigators at the scene had said, "Oh, we think this is blood." And, when looked at and tested, was not blood. After you eat something and it sits in your stomach for a while, a lot of things can give that appearance.
One moment. And doctor, there were bruises found on Alexavier in the autopsy, is that fair?
The other were, yes.
And bruises, do those immediately appear after an injury is suffered?
Not necessarily, no.
And could they be not visible after an injury and then appear later?
Yes.
And there was discussion also about a potential lethargy seen in Alexavier, difficulty in waking him when the law enforcement came through the house. Could that also be consistent with a concussion or mild TBI?
Possibly, yes.
And that can cause loss of consciousness?
It can. I mean, that's part of, how traumatic brain injuries can be defined as the length of unconsciousness associated with a concussive injury in particular. So.
Thank you, Doctor. I have nothing further.
Thank you.
Ross?
Morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Doctor, you are retired from your job as a pathologist in Utah, correct?
I'm retired from my work for the state, yes.
Correct. And in your work for the state, whenever you performed an autopsy, you would have to author a report relative to that autopsy, isn't that right?
That's correct.
It's mandated as part of your work as a forensic pathologist that whenever you're performing an autopsy and conducting work, that you document all of your findings and conclusions,
Objection,
isn't
this
that
is
right?
irrelevant.
It's very relevant.
Overruled.
Correct?
So it varies depending on where you are, but most states require that if you conduct an autopsy that you reduce the findings from your autopsy to a written report, yes. And that
You didn't author a report in this case, did you?
No, but I didn't conduct the autopsy.
As a defense expert, you have the ability to author a report, correct?
I do many times.
And oftentimes you are asked to write a formal report with your findings and
Objection,
conclusions,
this is
isn't that
not
right?
required by the statute, and this is relevant.
Well, you didn't author a formal report. Go ahead.
You didn't author a report with your findings and conclusions, correct?
I did not in this
Did you
case.
provide any written statements regarding your findings and conclusions to the defense?
No,
You did not?
no.
Okay. So you provided no information to the defense in writing that the state could have and examine. Is that fair?
Yes,
Okay. All of the information that you provided to them, you provided verbally?
correct.
Okay. How much did it cost for your consultation on this case?
I don't know. I mean, I bill for my time and experience basically at a rate of $500 an hour.
Doctor, you know when you walk into this courtroom that I'm going to ask you questions relative to how much you pay, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you came into court today knowing that I was going to ask these questions, and you are saying that you didn't figure out the amount, knowing that I was going to ask you these questions today. Is that right?
Well, I didn't know that you would specifically ask that total amount question, but I can give you a ballpark. I mean, it's
Every time you testify as a defense expert, you're asked these questions.
no, not
No?
every time. No.
Okay. The majority of the time you testify as a defense expert, you are asked these questions.
Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not.
Okay. And you said $500 an hour. How many hours did you put into this case?
I started working on this case in 2023. I would guess at this point I have put in somewhere around 20 hours.
20 hours
Yes,
at $500 an hour.
yes,
On top of that, $500 an hour for 20 hours, you get paid separate and distinctly for your testimony today. Isn't that correct?
I don't get paid for my testimony. I get paid to appear and testify. What I say is not what I'm being paid for.
Thank you for clarifying that. You get paid to appear and testify, and that's at a different rate than that $500 an hour for 20 hours. Isn't that right?
No, it's the same rate.
The same rate. So the longer you spend on the stand, the more money you make today.
No, for court appearances, I mean, I still bill at the same hourly rate, but I bill it in half-day increments. So if I'm
Half-day
here for
increments?
half a day, then it's $2,000. If I'm here for a full day, it's $4,000.
So half day is $2,000, full day is $4,000. That's different than what you originally said. You said you originally would bill it out at $500 an hour. That's not what you just answered, though, is it?
Not exactly, no.
Not exactly, no. It's important in your profession to be accurate, correct?
I would say so, yes.
You're used to answering questions from attorneys based on your profession, correct?
Correct.
And I just asked you a pretty clear question, and you got the answer wrong. Isn't that right?
If you can interpret it that way, yes.
How do you interpret it?
My rate is, I answered the question related to how I bill. And
Don't bill $500 an hour for testimony. You bill half day or full day. I asked you how you bill for testimony, and you originally said $500 an hour,
Asked and
correct?
answered, he's
That's
battering the
correct.
witness at this point. Objection, asked and answered, he's
Sustain. Move on.
So you gave all the answers to the defense verbally, not in any written fashion. We covered that, correct?
Yes.
Ask an answer.
I was laying foundation for the next question.
Go ahead.
Now, this child suffered multiple blunt force impacts all over his body.
Yes.
Multiple to the head.
Yes.
Multiple to the side of the eye on different planes, isn't that right?
Yes.
Multiple that were revealed once his hair was shaved, correct?
Yes.
Multiple different portions of the head, correct?
Yes.
Each one of the bruises that are documented by Dr. Quinton in his autopsy is a separate and distinct blow to the head to Alexavier Pedrin, isn't that right?
Yes.
An assaultive blow, correct?
I don't know. Can't tell from looking at them.
You can look at the fact that there's so many blows on different planes and different sides of his head that you can say it's not an accident, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, certainly the cumulative total of them suggests that they are inflicted. I will agree with that, yes.
Okay.
But any specific injury, you can't say that.
When you're practicing medicine, you're applying the differential diagnostic process, isn't that right?
Yes.
And explain to the jury, no, I'll tell you, the differential diagnostic process is looking at the child as a whole or the patient as a whole and their entire conditions correctly,
Yes.
and making a diagnosis as to what makes sense based on the entire clinical picture you're seeing, right?
Yes.
So we don't just look at one bruise on the head or one bruise on the other side of the head or the injuries to the organs. It's important to look at all of the injuries, the entire constellation of injuries on this child's body as a whole.
Yes, that is true.
And the entire physical injuries on this child's body, the constellation of injuries as a whole, demonstrate that this child was violently assaulted. Isn't that right?
Not word I would use. I mean, there's no question that his injuries in total are consistent with inflicted abuse, that he was abused.
Inflicted child abuse, correct? He's a child.
Yes.
All right, this is inflicted abuse of a child, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And we can also reasonably conclude that the medication, the Xanax that's in his system, he ingested, however you want to say he took it, that happened after the abuse, right?
Objection.
Actually, I don't think we can say that. We don't know either, within a 24-hour window, we can say when the injuries happen, but we have no idea when the medication was administered, either to him or he did it himself. We don't know.
You would agree that this is a very high level of Xanax in his system?
Well, it's a high level in his cavity blood that we don't know what it means with respect to his system.
You just testified under direct examination that this level in an adult could be toxic to an adult and maybe cause the death of an adult.
Yes, if it's a blood level. Yes.
And you also testified under direct examination that it's wholly possible that the result from the cavity blood may be the actual result that was in his system. You said that when they asked you the question.
Yes, they may.
It may be, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if this child ingests that level of this drug, it's going to make him symptomatic really quick. Isn't that right?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I would expect it. So you can't infer from a given level in someone's blood how much of a dose they took. You know that you can say that a given level would require more than, say, one pill. But beyond that, you can't say. And because we don't really have good data about what these levels mean in children, there's not a good way to say what this specific level means with how much he ingested. With respect to your specific question of how soon he would be symptomatic, that would be a function certainly of how much he ingested, but I don't know how much he ingested, but it certainly could be quick.
Well, when people take medication, they don't take it so it can take effect 14 hours later, correct?
Oh, no, I would not expect it to take that kind of time.
Take it so it can take effect rather quickly.
Yes.
And Xanax is a pill Xanax or lorazepam is a pill that someone takes so that it can take effect within an hour or so. Isn't that right, in general?
Generally speaking, yes.
So you'd expect the effects of that pill to take place within at least an hour. Isn't that right?
I would expect so.
Now, you testified that, and going back to the injuries, and my question related to the injuries of this child, it doesn't make sense that someone beats a child after the child's unconscious from a pill, correct? That just defies logic.
That's correct.
That makes no sense whatsoever.
From a practical standpoint, I mean, that's a common sense opinion.
Yeah, so when we look at again, the entire clinical picture of this child as a whole, we can safely say that this child was physically abused and then was given Xanax afterwards or took Xanax on his own afterwards, which is your conclusion. Is that correct?
That certainly would be an explanation, yes.
Now, it's important when we're looking at how this child got Xanax in the child's system that we consider the fact that he was abused, right?
I mean, it's part of the whole context, yes.
We can't ignore that, right? Because that's not the practice of medicine.
No.
We have to look at those injuries and the abuse, right?
Yes.
We have to look at the severity of those injuries and the abuse, right?
Yes.
Those injuries are going to be symptomatic, aren't they?
I would expect there would be some symptoms, yes.
For example, a rib fracture. He has a fractured 10th posterior rib. That's a painful thing.
I would expect so.
Even when he breathes, right?
Yes.
He's going to feel that pain.
I would expect so, yes.
Okay. You were asked questions relative to when he was observed by law enforcement and he was described as lethargic and things of that nature when law enforcement was on scene. Did you actually watch that body cam?
I did.
You did watch that body cam?
Yes.
Okay. You had the police reports relative to the statements of witnesses afterwards, correct?
Yes.
And you were aware that he was described as being awake and alert after that, correct?
Correct.
That would be inconsistent with him having Alexavier in his system at that point, isn't that right?
Can you repeat that?
Yes. Him being described, Alexavier being described as awake and alert for hours and hours after law enforcement came to the residence would be inconsistent with him having Alexavier or Xanax in his system at that point in time when law enforcement came.
This is mischaracterizing the evidence.
I believe part of it is. There is a phrase that at some point he was awake and alert. Go ahead.
So sorry, can you repeat it again?
Let's just go over the time frame.
Sure.
You're aware that this defendant described that Alexavier was awake watching TV with her until 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
Okay. You're aware that this defendant described that she tried to put Alexavier to sleep around midnight and he wouldn't go to sleep, so she turned the TV back on.
Yes.
You're aware of those facts?
Yes.
You're aware that this defendant's mother stopped by the house after 9 p.m. to pick up 2 older children and described Alexavier as laughing and playing with the other children.
Objection hearsay.
It goes to his opinion.
Overruled. Go ahead.
You're aware of that information, correct?
Yes.
You're aware that there's a phone call between this defendant and Laura Lee, her friend, at 10:30 at night where they both describe Alexavier saying the same thing, that he wanted to get up in the middle of the night and get into some trouble, right?
Yes.
You're aware of all that information?
Yes.
And all that information flies in the face of this child having Alexavier or Xanax in his system at 7 o'clock when law enforcement's on scene. Isn't that right? They opened the door to this. They absolutely talked about it.
Yep. Overruled.
So it doesn't, you know, I guess what I would say is it doesn't exclude the possibility that he took Xanax, but it certainly would require for him to be dead of it to have taken it again.
It would
After
require
that
what? I'm
time.
sorry, I missed that.
It would require him, if his initial lethargy and other things were caused by Xanax, and then he seemed to be up and moving around, and then is ultimately dead from Xanax, would require him to have taken more Xanax.
Taken more.
Yes.
Yes. And his sleepiness from 5 to 7 p.m. could be from the melatonin he took. Isn't that right?
Potentially.
You're aware that he had melatonin in his system, correct?
Yes.
One of the other toxicology findings in this case was caffeine. There was caffeine, presumptive positive for caffeine in his
Yes.
system, correct?
Yes.
You're aware that Alexavier, one of the things or claims made was that Alexavier would get up in the middle of the night, right?
Yes.
And he would look for things to eat or drink, correct?
Yeah. Correct.
And having caffeine in his system would be consistent with ingesting, for example, a Red Bull in the middle of the night.
It certainly would be. Mm-hmm.
And Red Bull has caffeine in it, quite a large amount,
It
actually.
does. It does.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the liver laceration. That would also be a very painful injury, isn't that right?
The liver itself, you don't have a lot of good discrete pain receptors within your internal organs. So from a pain standpoint, you wouldn't necessarily be able to say, oh, my liver has been injured, but certainly the bleeding that would be associated with that, blood within the abdominal cavity is generally, in most people, described as a painful thing.
Described as painful, correct?
Correct.
And he has not only a lacerated liver, but he has damage to other organs as well, isn't that correct?
He has some hemorrhage around his pancreas, has hemorrhage around his initial part of his small intestine, and in the wall of his small intestine, yes.
There's been studies to demonstrate the type of forces necessary to cause liver lacerations or internal organ lacerations to children, isn't that right?
I believe there are. If I've seen them, it's been a while. But
It's something that would be important for you to know when you testify here as an expert regarding a liver laceration in the child, correct?
certainly, it requires a fair amount of force to lacerate a liver.
A fair amount of force, right?
Yes.
We don't see children just coming into the hospitals on a daily or weekly basis with lacerated livers from minor trauma.
No.
It requires something rather significant.
Yes.
One of the ways that children suffer liver lacerations is when they ride their bikes and they come to an abrupt stop and their handlebars go directly into their stomach.
Correct.
That's the type of force it causes, where the handlebars go into the stomach and they tumble over their bikes, right?
Yes.
A real blow of something that's pushing the organs against the back spine, correct?
Correct.
That's the type of force we're talking about here.
That's an example of it, yes.
Yes, of what we need to cause these injuries.
Yes, and I mean, those types of injuries, bicycle handlebar injuries, certainly can be much more severe than what is present in this case, but the mechanism is accurate.
When we talk about the possibility of Alexavier getting up and taking this medication after he suffered this beating, we have to take into account first that he's got a broken leg, correct?
Yes, I mean, it's healing, he's in a cast, but yes.
He's got limited mobility.
I don't know specifically what his mobility was.
You're aware, are you aware from the records that you reviewed, the law enforcement records, that he wasn't supposed to walk at all on that leg?
I seem to recall that now that you said that, but I don't remember specifically.
Did you review the scene photographs in this case?
I did.
Are you aware that he was supposed to use a walker if he was walking on his own?
I don't recall specifically whether he was supposed to or not.
Are you aware of where the walker was located by law enforcement when they conducted the scene
I
investigation?
do not recall, no.
Do you know that it was folded away and he wasn't even using it?
No.
There's no facts not in evidence.
I asked him if he is aware of it.
That's speculative. That's
All right. Overruled. Go ahead.
Not aware.
And just so it's clear, being aware or not aware does not mean the facts are in evidence. It just, he's not aware of it.
Alexavier had bruising on his hands, correct?
Some, yes. Mm-hmm.
That's an additional area where he was assaulted.
Well,
Speculation.
Yeah, I don't know.
He says, I don't know, overruled.
An additional area where there's blunt force injuries noted on his body.
Could you repeat that?
It's an additional area where he has blunt force injuries on his body.
He does have blunt injuries, yes.
On his hands.
Yes.
The pill bottle that was located on scene, that had child safety locks on it, isn't that right?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. What do you recall about all the pill bottles that were located in the bag where that pill bottle is purported to have come from?
As far as purported to come from, I don't know. I mean, it was my belief, or my understanding is that the bottle found next to him was for prednisone, which was not tested for and not identified, whether he took any of that or not. But beyond that, I don't know.
You don't believe he was tested for prednisone on toxicology?
No.
Really?
Really?
Are you sure about that?
Nearly 100%, yes.
That they didn't look for prednisone in Alexavier's autopsy?
That's not a routine part of any forensic pathology tox testing that I'm aware of.
In this case, they had concern for prednisone, and you're saying that when they tested Alexavier's toxicology, they did not look first for prednisone. As you sit there under oath, that's what you're telling this jury?
That's my recollection, yes.
That's your recollection? I'm going to ask if we can just take a brief break. I want to get the autopsy toxicology report.
If you find it, go ahead. What's that?
It's important to get facts right when you're testifying under oath, right?
Yes.
Okay. And as you sit there right now, you're telling us that in a case where it was originally believed that this may be a prednisone overdose, nobody tested for prednisone. That's what you're telling us.
That's my belief, yes.
That's your belief. And it'd be important for you, before you take the stand, to review all the documentation and make sure that you have a mastery of the facts, correct?
Yes.
And if you got that wrong, that would be a big mistake on your part.
I don't know about big, but yeah, it would depend on the relevance of the finding.
Well, that was one of the original concerns for the cause of death in this case, isn't it? Prednisone.
Well, it was found next to him, and so yes, they would be concerned that he took it. I'm not aware of any cases of death by overdose from prednisone.
If you're looking for the autopsy report, it's Exhibit 27.
27. Blows to the head can cause swelling of the brain, correct?
Could you say blows to the head can cause swelling of the brain? By themselves, generally no, but
If there's multiple?
if there's what?
Multiple blows to the head?
It would depend on what they do, but generally speaking, no.
Doctor, you may be right on the prednisone. I thought there was a screen for it. So I'll come back to that issue. When we're talking about the investigation of the scene in this particular case, the rest of the pill bottles that were contained inside that bag all had the caps on them, is that correct?
Yes,
They all had the exact prescribed medication that matched the label inside, isn't that correct?
that's my understanding, yes.
And that's a factor for you to take into account too when you're looking at how the medication got inside of Alexavier, isn't that right?
Yes.
They all had the child locks engaged, isn't that right?
It's my understanding, yes.
And it's important to take into consideration the developmental capabilities of Alexavier, isn't that right?
Yes.
And child locks would be a safety mechanism on that container that would keep a child of Alexavier's age from getting into that.
That would be why it's, oh, sorry.
What was your question again?
A child safety lock that is engaged on a pill bottle would be something that would keep a 6-year-old child from getting into that medication.
Yeah, overruled, go ahead.
So that would certainly be the intent of its design. Whether there's no 6-year-old that can get into it, I can't answer.
It would require a child to both push down and turn, correct?
The usual mechanism, yes.
You're aware of where the bag was found?
I don't recall.
You don't recall where the bag was found?
No.
It's found next to his body. Does that help you recall?
No.
It'd be fair to say that based on the description of how Alexavier was acting that evening, that he took in that lorazepam or Xanax sometime after 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, isn't that right?
Fiction, speculation.
Given his earlier testimony, I'll allow the question to be asked. Go ahead.
That would be expected, yes.
That'd be expected. It happened after that time frame.
Yes.
And you're aware that this defendant and only this defendant was home with Alexavier for the last 14 hours of his life.
Yes.
Question that's asked and answered and mischaracterizes the evidence.
It wasn't asked and answered, and you just said yes.
Doesn't matter what his answer is, it doesn't mischaracterize the evidence. Go ahead.
Yes, she was the only one home for that time frame, correct?
Yes.
Only adult home.
Correct.
That's-
Thank you, Judge.
okay. Can I just correct something? You said 14 hours, but I believe you had said there was evidence of somebody being there at 9:30? Somebody picking up?
Sure.
Yeah,
I'll
so it's
clarify
not
that.
14 hours, 12 hours. I mean, I'm just trying to, that there was an objection on the basis of the factual mischaracterization. I just don't want it to be mischaracterized. What was the actual?
Cyber.
What?
We get cyber.
Yep.
You're aware that the first responders described Alexavier's body still a little bit warm to the touch. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. That demonstrates that he would have died relatively recently to when they responded, within an hour or so?
I don't think it tells us that at all. I mean, the cooling of the body is a very wishy-washy, it's not a very precise way of determining how long someone's been dead.
There's a lot of factors that go into it, like the temperature of the room, correct?
Correct.
The size of the body,
Yes.
and the age of the individual, things of that nature, right?
There are a number of things that influence that, yes.
It's been studied, but it's not precise.
No, definitely not precise.
When I gave the 14-hour range, I'm going to clarify a little bit more. We know that an adult stopped by to pick up 2 adult children, is that correct?
Yes.
And that adult was the defendant's mother, is that right?
Yes.
And when that adult, the defendant's mother, stopped by to pick up the 2 older children, the defendant was there with her mother that time frame, correct, according to the
Yes.
reports?
Yes.
They were engaging with one another.
That's my understanding, yes.
And she picked up those 2 children and left, correct?
Correct.
There is no evidence whatsoever that that other adult was in any way, shape, or form left alone with Alexavier.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. And after that adult, the defendant's mother picks up the 2 older children, it's this defendant and this defendant alone is the only adult in the home.
Correct.
And that's after roughly 9:30 p.m., correct?
Yes.
And that goes until 9:25 a.m. when first responders are on scene, is that right?
Correct.
Thank you, Doctor, that's all I have.
All right. Redirect?
Yes, thank you. Doctor, do we know when exactly Alexavier died?
No.
And Alexavier, when he was discovered in the morning, he was in a state of rigor mortis, is that correct?
Yes.
And what does that tell you?
I mean, it's another thing like cooling of the body. There are certain changes that happen in the body post-mortem. The body will cool off, the body becomes stiff, and blood, settles into the lowest portions of the body. All of those things happen in a sort of gradual, progressive way over time. When a person first dies, there's no evidence of stiffening, there's no visible evidence of lividity or that pooling of the blood, and they're going to feel essentially as warm as they did. Most of the studies on postmortem cooling say that there's at least a plateau period initially where the body will remain at its normal temperature for a period of time, an hour or more. But the stiffening of the body happens in a progressive way, usually is present within an hour or 2, becomes more developed, and stays then fully developed after a period of about 12 hours until the body starts to decompose. But the presence of that, we just don't know how long. I mean, it doesn't tell us enough nothing really informative as far as how long they've been dead, other than, if the presence of rigor mortis suggests they didn't just die. So it's probably been an hour or more. But again, other findings, if there was video that said, he was doing this, 45 minutes before, it certainly could be consistent with that, but could be really anywhere beyond that time frame.
Now, the government's lawyer made a big deal about how Dr. Quinton ordered testing for prednisone. You remember that?
Yes.
And in fact, was that the case? Did they test for prednisone?
I don't believe so, no.
And is that something they could have tested for?
I'm not aware of a lab that offers that testing specifically. I'm sure there are research labs somewhere that can look at that question, but it's not. In the setting of postmortem toxicology, most anything that can be used to lead to, cause, or contribute to someone's death has been looked at in terms of the ability to test for it. Like I said before, I haven't seen a case of someone dying of a prednisone overdose, and I'm not aware of a lab that specifically includes that as part of any of their routine screens.
That could have been a possibility. Is that your testimony?
It's possible that testing could be done, but I don't know where that would be.
Now, there was some discussion of child locks. Are child locks 100% child-proof?
I'm not a product expert, don't know. I would guess not, but given the resourcefulness of children, but I don't know.
And you testified that we don't know when the alprazolam was ingested. Is that fair?
No, and we also don't know if it came from a bottle.
And we don't know if it was ingested multiple times, perhaps?
We don't. I mean, what we have is a single level in a blood sample that's not terribly helpful in terms of interpretation. We know that he has Xanax in his system, but that one level, even if it was a good, femoral blood sample, we don't know whether that represents one ingestion, multiple ingestions over time. There's not a way to know that from that single level. That's just a snapshot of what's going on in his blood at the time of his death.
And does the evidence support that there could have been initially a lower dose administered and then a later higher dose that was ingested?
That's possible.
And is it also possible that the child suffered a concussion and the effects of that, and then later ingested alprazolam? Is that
also possible, yes.
Now, there was some discussion about the types of forces and mechanisms that can lead to the liver laceration. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
Would it be something that could be caused by a strong and angry man who can inflict those injuries?
Certainly that's possible.
And there was also some questions about whether you're getting paid to perform your job. Is it normal for people to get paid for their time?
Yes.
And doctor, are all of your opinions held to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes. And to me, what that means is, that within my understanding of the science and the medicine behind the things I've testified to, that these are reasonable conclusions.
And so your opinion remains that this was an undetermined death?
Yes.
Doctor, just to be clear, a forensic pathologist, you are not to opine on who did something, right?
Yeah, I don't know who did it.
That's for the jury to determine, correct?
Correct.
So when you're asked to speculate on whether an adult man could do it, an adult woman could do it too, right?
Possible.
Right?
Yes.
That's not for you to decide, is it?
I mean, I don't have any way to know that. I can tell you that the injuries are consistent with an adult having caused them, but which adult, I don't know.
That's all I have. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, doctor. I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, you do have a